Hey, let's talk about preaching. This is on my mind because of the church that we attend. About a year ago, well, it would have been Christmas 2024, we attended a Christmas Eve service at a large church here in our area, 4,000 or 5,000. And that Christmas Eve, the pastor gave an absolute clinic on how to do a sermon for a special occasion or a holiday. I mean, it was probably in my top 5 favorite sermons ever. It was just really good. I don't think that I'm easily impressed, but that was flat out impressive. And I was truly amazed. And so we'd been attending the church for the last year or so. And fast forward now to Christmas of 2025, and same production value. We actually went to 2 services. One was traditional with the full orchestra and choir, and the other was the more contemporary. But the message itself in 2025 just wasn't the same caliber as the one the year before. Now, I can't cast too much shade on that pastor because he is a fine communicator. And like I said, we've been attending for a year, so we got a chance to get a feel for his style, and I genuinely, learned some things from him, but this is one of those cases where you kind of wonder what happened, and I'll put it that way. And I'm not trying to be overly critical. It just, get high expectations, because of the year before. and let's be honest, all of us who are in the pastoral trade have had those sermons that we wish we had back. They didn't land the way we wanted them to, or the way we delivered wasn't what we kind of expected. And anyway, it happens. Now, I want to be careful here, because preaching is actually high stakes, right? The last stat I saw was 86% of pastor or church visitors will decide on a church based on the preaching. No pressure, right? And I also know that we pastors, we get a little sensitive about preaching. Because we all have our own special style, we have our own process, our methodology of studying, and it's easy to get a little defensive about that. And there's a reason for it. And the reason is typically that it's art, and art, by its very nature, makes the artist vulnerable. I'm going to talk about that again in a later coffee run. So I get it. I understand just how sensitive all of this is. But I think for me, just having had that experience as someone in the pew, someone in the seat, someone in the audience, someone in the congregation, I think it got me to kind of pause and take a step back and ask a bigger question. At least this is what I'm wrestling with. You may have worked this out. If you already haven't worked out, cool. Pray for the rest of us, right? But what are we trying to do with the task of preaching? What are we actually trying to do? I know. There's the whole notion of, well, you're cracking open the Word of God. Yep, I get that. Or some of my more fundamentalist friends like to rightly divide the word. I'm still not sure I know exactly what that means, but okay. But as far as a component of our service, of our Sunday morning or any type of worship service, what are we attempting to do with the sermon? And I don't know if I wrestled with that at any great depth. Maybe you have. That's cool. But I'm asking myself that question. When it comes down to the Sunday morning sermon, what are we doing? What do I want to accomplish with that? And then it strikes me that there's a deeper question beyond that, and one that's a little harder to get at, but maybe not. What does God want to do through preaching? Because in the ancient church, the central component of worship was communion, right? It was the Eucharist. And I think in some ways Catholics get that right. Although, just personally, I don't know if I particularly care to do, communion every single week. But I get it, and I understand that becomes a central component of the worship service. But Protestantism kind of flipped that around, and really the central point of our service is always the sermon. Maybe that's American evangelicalism, but I don't think so. I think there is this idea that the sermon is central to the worship service. And I think we need to step back, and I think we need to ask that question, what are we trying to accomplish? And more importantly, what does God want to do with that? What does he want to do with that? Now, if we can all kind of check our egos at the door, check in with God about these things, and then maybe check in with each other, maybe we can actually learn something. Because the Lord might be stirring something in you in particular about the Sunday morning sermon. I don't know where that strikes you today, or if if it's even worth you thinking about. But this has been on my mind, quite a bit. This task of preaching, as the great Ellsworth Callis called it, sitting at the sacred desk and talking about the Word of God. And what does he want to do with that? What are you trying to accomplish with it? I think these are deep questions that we need to wrestle with. Anyway, so however that hits you today, I'm going to go grab coffee. Grace and peace.